what is the future of software engineering and software development, especially in the age of AI? That's been a question we're pondering. What is the future of a lot of careers, but specifically around a technology career that is help make AI in Copilot? It just so happens we have someone here to talk about that. Welcome to the IT Tech Talks, and we will kick it off now. Hello. Welcome back, listeners, viewers. It's been quite a spell. We've kind of retold things. We're going to have a show around that, specifically around the path forward of this channel and the podcast and the blogs and everything. So we know you're there and we have been itching for stuff. So I might put this in front of all the other shows that we have queued up. But as usual, sitting in the Copilot, we got Chris. Chris, how you doing today?
Hey guys, doing well, Mike. It's beautiful fall weather up here, so it's the best time of the year for sure.
Best time of the year. You get me at fall, except for the allergies. But aside from that, we have that special guest in the intro I mentioned on screen with us today to kind of help talk through those issues. Who do we have with us today, Chris?
Yeah, so I'm really psyched to have a really good friend of mine, known him for a long time. Friend of mine, Matthew Ledger. He's a software engineer for over 20 years. Currently, he's a principal engineer for a small consulting group. He has tons of experience in the way of architecting and development. He leads a development group right now, and really. His ability to adapt with the times, to grow personally. He just went out and got his own Azure certification for the heck of it, and really understand those cloud technologies to be able to grow and then create secure, distributed, and high performance systems that really drive significant improvements and throughput with efficiencies. So, Matt, great to see you. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's awesome being here.
It's great to have you, Matt. And I know during some of the pregame and even before the pregame, Chris is a big fan. So that's why, if you get his stamp of approval, you're going to get a lot of people's stamp of approval. So it's good to see you're doing great work out there. So there's something I didn't tell you in the pregame because I want like off the cuff answers from you. It's a getting to know you since this is the first time around with you on the show. Tech and not tech related questions. Just rapid fire, right off the top of your head. Android or iPhone?
iPhone.
Oof. Okay.
One more for the good guys.
Right to the heart. Okay, what was the last book you read?
I believe it was Silo.
Okay. All right. So I might have said Chris's book that's in Amazon.
Yeah, right.
I'm just teasing.
Yeah. You did read it.
I did read it.
Last movie you saw?
I honestly don't remember.
That's all good. We'll pass on that one. How about last song in your car?
It was probably a Disney movie song with my kids in the backseat, to be honest with you. It was probably something from Tangled or
yeah. Could have been the first one too, right? That could have been the answer to the last movie you saw too, most likely.
True. That's right. Yeah.
Tangled and Tangled. So one last thing. If there was say singularity comes to fruition, whatever it is, you have one piece of tech that you can hang on to and use to, help you move forward. What is that last piece of tech you're going to hang on to?
It help you move forward? It's got to be my right now. My iPhone or something, because it's always in my hands. So you do everything with that thing.
That's awesome. Well, thanks again for having us. Just a little get to know you. We do that. We grill all the new ones on the show. So Chris did a really good history of you. Is there anything you want to add to your history and your background? You're managing a team. You're doing a lot of good work. What space you're in, if you're allowed to say that. I know some people aren't allowed to say that. Some people do government work and whatnot. But what space you in? What's your career, your job, and your arc look like?
Sure. today I'm in the banking space. So the company I'm with right now, we do a lot of work with banks and credit unions.
Oh, okay.
Um, yeah. So
That's a,
it's a lot of
yeah, that's a big thing there, right? Because especially if you're doing like teller and all kinds of investments and stuff like that, that's you got to make sure those decimals are right. And I leave that to smart folks like you. So, it was brought up that you got your Azure cert. I totally take my hat off for you for that. That's great. I love seeing people just dive in, especially when they do it on their own. They don't have to do it for their job or to keep it. They do it because they want to stay relevant. But that coattails of a lot of that is Copilot and AI and Chat GPT and things like that. How has that impacted your day-to-day? Has it impacted? And if so, how did it impact your day-to-day life as a software engineer running a team of people? um, what's it look like right now for you?
well, we started using Copilot actually, I think in preview. So the impact, the results have been kind of mixed, although they have improved over the way. So at first, when Copilot came out, it was IntelliSense on steroids, right? So the overall, it has made writing code a lot easier. Uh, when 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 you can like hit that return key and then it shows you a bunch of suggested code that is exactly what you were about to type, that makes you happy as a
Yeah.
developer.
And I think for clarity, we should say it's GitHub Copilot we're talking about here.
Yeah.
GitHub Copilot, yes.
There are far too many Copilots.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, it's kind of like Xerox or something.
Right.
Kleenex, GitHub, I believe, was the first one, so that's just the one I know.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. So you find it useful because it's going to help you from keying all that out or getting snips and bits and mashing it all together, making sure it makes sense. So that's definitely a time saver. But the question I have, like I don't call myself a developer. I do infrastructure as code. I do code. I do Python, but I'm not like you. Like you're a whole different level of. You're just different level. Question I have is, do you trust it? Is when you hit that button and you do that review, have you got to the point where you can just churn it out, hit that button and add it to your code, or are you constantly doing that human check?
I am constantly doing that human check. At the end of the day, you are responsible for the code you post to the repo. I personally can't just accept it, although I have to say that more and more it is just accepted. I look through it and read it. It is what I wanted. Most often, depending on the size of the suggested code piece, there will be a few changes you need to tweak here and there, property names or things like that. But yeah, you are responsible for making sure it's what you want for coding.
So I like to call it the 80% tool, right? Where it's going to get me 80% of the way there, whether I'm writing content, whether I'm doing analysis on customers, whatever. One of the many things, right? If you had to put a percentage on it, what would you say the accuracy is?
I 80% is good. I would say it's somewhere between 50 and 80%, depending on how complex the code bases you're in. Like what the piece of code you're trying to write. There are times when you're doing boilerplate code, it's right on.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I love it when I'm mapping some trying to map some values to this to that. Like Copilot picks up on that right away, and it's great to be able to just hit return and like boom, that dictionary that's mapping this a new value to these things. It's all done for you. Sometimes when you're getting into some funky business logic, that's where your 80-20% rule, I think, comes more into play, where you see what it's trying to do. You say, yeah, I like that. I'll hit return, and then I'll go in and modify some things. But either way, that's still better than having to type it all out yourself.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about saving time versus being more productive. It could be considered one and the same, right? But at the same time, if you think about them in a vacuum, do you find that it helps you move along the coding process, the development process, or do you find that it more helps you to some of that wasted time, like you said, out of your day?
Absolutely. So it helps in various ways too. So not only while you're actively coding with the suggestions, which I like, which get better and better and better as Copilot knows the context of your code base, but also some of the other things that you're supposed to do that you may not do, like add unit tests. Sometimes you just don't add as many unit tests as you should because you just run out of time, or it's just like that method's so simple, how could it possibly break? But with Copilot you can just say, go make a unit test for that, and then you're not the one doing it. That allows you to spend time testing the chunks of code that scare you. That's really what you want to be spending your time on.
Right. That's great.
So if I may chime in, did a little screen flip here. This is where Copilots, or should say AI, is horrible at. I asked it to make a new background for me, and it can't even spell the words I spelled for it.
Right. That's one of my biggest frustrations.
The logos are wrong. They have everything all kind of screwy here. And so this is the fear that I have, when I am trying to put out content, and I want to kind of, now I live with someone that does that kind of stuff, but by the human side, and it just takes longer. And sometimes it's, I can't wait. So I'll just throw it again, and I get rubbish out because I throw in everything I think so that needs to be there. But it's not necessarily, it's not accurate. I can't trust it, and it's not like 80% rule where you say, oh, you know what? I'm just going to go in there and click in there and fix the word awk instead of talk.
Right.
It's a little bit different when it comes to code, because you can go in there and move some stuff around. Now the question, like, again, not trying to lay on people's fears. I'm actually trying to belay them in this use case. Is it easier in the fear less because you have direct contact with the code and you're able to fix things that just aren't right? And my next add-on question that directly, do you use AI to check human code to see if there's a mistake? Like, I know you're talking about building stuff, but is that kind of a use case that you're seeing out there?
Yes. So I think to what you were saying, like the fear, there may be less fear because you are dealing with so much text that you can just go in and change, all that code. So it's a lot easier to modify. There's change control. There's, you can revert things a little bit easier. There's code reviews that you can go through. So that process, that creative process of coding, is just a constant change. So I think, you're willing to accept that extra work from Copilot. And what was your second question again?
Do you have human generated code? Do you throw that at Copilot to say, hey, do an error check?
Yes, actually, we do that quite often. I know, like, a lot of the junior developers too. Well, so with Copilot, there's also now Copilot chat, where you can specify a selection, like a file, a class, a method, or the project or the solution level, and give it a context to work at. And I have seen other developers, junior developers, and I've used it a few times too, where you ask Copilot to optimize this code and just see what it tells you. Because a lot of times, going again back to Chris's 80-20 rule, sometimes it'll give you these suggestions where there's a few gems in there. It's like, oh yeah, I can do that. If I make this change, it becomes more modular. If I make this change, it's easier to test. If I make this change, it's a little more performant. And not that you would never get to it yourself, but there's just a lot going on, and that may not be on the forefront of your mind. Yeah. So yeah, it's definitely used.
Yeah, that's awesome. So sorry, Chris, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, Matt used a key word there in that creative, right? Creative is what we're talking about here. And certainly it's going to save you time if you can describe within a prompt what you're looking for. You get that 80%, depending on the complexity. Very good, fair point. And I posted an article just a couple of days ago about the fact that AI is not creative. Humans are creative. AI is just another tool. The way we see it today. We could argue all day long about what AI actually is, but the marketing geniuses have decided everything is AI now. So whatever. I digress. But I think that's an important point. And we've talked about it here on the show too, with regard to if you have something very, very precise, whether it's code, whether it's something written, audio, video, images, whatnot, if you have something very, very precise in mind, you're going to struggle to use some of these tools to get exactly what you want. You might get 80% of the way there. If you had to go and fix that image that AI created for you and put the letters in the right place and all that, it would probably not come out great, right? Whereas you're going to spend a ton of time on that. You might be better off just doing it from scratch with a combination of stock images and things like that. So I think that's an important point is that humans are creative and these are just tools that we can use for now anyway.
Exactly. Because what I use the image side, not the code side. I use the image side all the time. And now, like with some of the changes coming on with Tech Talks here, I'm slinging them over to the marketing team and I'm like, Nathan, can you make this? Nathan, can you make this? Nathan, or Sophia, can you make that? Like, I'm just tossing it over at the team saying, make this. This is the concept I want. This is the look and feel I want. Now, like, make it real. So it's great tool for also people that don't know what they want, where they can put some things down and start to get a visualization. Because I know the biggest disconnect from, and not the coders as much as the other use case, is like pulling out of somebody's brain what their thought is. Now with coding, how do you do that? How do you pull out those thoughts? Is it just a requirements gathering? And have you ever fed the requirements of an app into a Copilot? Has any of that helped at least outline maybe user stories or what have you?
Well, some of the things that we have used Copilot for is like if you're getting into a code base that you don't know, you can, Copilot can help you explain what that code base is. So you might get into a module and you literally in the Copilot chat ask it to explain what this specific module is, and it'll give you a rundown, and you can read it and you can look at the code, and it's a good way to get into an unknown code base and start to ramp up quickly without involving other developers. It's all, at some point you will have to, but getting as much information as you can first, to navigate that code base is a more efficient way to do that.
Is there any other use cases that you guys can see using aside from, analyzing? I liked when you were talking about making the unit testing. That didn't occur to me to use Copilot to do that. So thank you, tip. But are there any other use cases you guys are using that for?
So we've used it to optimize existing code. I know that we've gotten into, sometimes you go into an older code, not so much older, but you go into a piece of code to add a new feature, and you get to a chunk of code where you're like, I'm pretty sure this can be more efficient, right? So you can ask Copilot for ways to optimize the code. You can go into older code bases and ask it that maybe you don't even know the languages that well. That it might not be your primary language. You can go in there and make a small fix, or you know enough to make a small fix, but you may struggle on the syntax a bit. Copilot can help you figure out why you're getting that error during compile time or runtime, and you get through it that way. It helps out all kinds of ways.
So let me ask, when you talk about some of that code that you don't know, some of those older codes that maybe you just aren't familiar with, my understanding is that there is some element of being able to document the code that you have, right? And follow maybe a documentation standard based on a library that you provide to the Copilot. Could you go in and essentially document what this code is doing for me, so that you can kind of break it down and be able to figure out, what it is you're trying to fix or whatever?
Yeah, there is a feature in there, and we've also used that as well, where you can ask it. There's an action, I forget what our command. You can ask it to document what it a class, and it'll do it for you. And the whole time you have control. It'll usually, when you're using the Copilot chat, it'll suggest the changes that it's proposing, and in the chat window, and it's up to you to move that code into the main editor. So you still have control, and a lot of times too, it may not be the documentation it produces may not be great or 100% what you want, but that's where you come into play.
Right. Human creativity.
Exactly.
So kind of looking at the future, understanding where this technology lays out for you and your team, it seems like it's kind of here to stay, right?
Oh yes.
So
yeah,
what do you?
The genie's out of the bottle, baby. There's no putting it back in.
Where do you see the future in this space? Do you see the future having, the lower cost apps because you can use more junior resources headed up by a super senior resource in Copilot? Do you see this just as another arrow in the quiver? Do you see what is it looking like in your space?
Yeah, I do believe it's for simple applications. It will enable maybe not professional developers, but the weekend warriors to build the applications they've always wanted to build. The low code editors will get better and better and better, but I think you're always going to need some of that higher level development work that's going to need to take place. And I just feel like really the context space of Copilot will just expand. So right now it understands the method, the class, the project, the solution, and it's probably going to expand to like the environment that it's in, your DevOps build and pipeline environment. Where are you deploying it to? What environments are you deploying it to? And it may, I don't know. I see a day where I could be in there coding, and it's going to tell me that your code changes for this module may not work well in production, because given what I'm seeing for this activity. That'd be cool.
Yeah, that makes sense. The news everywhere. You've got these doomsayers that say software engineering as an art is dead. All software engineers are going to be out of jobs in 5 years.
Nope.
Care to comment?
I don't think so. I don't see it happening. I think it's like you have musicians out there, right? But you can also use GarageBand on your iPad to make your own mix, of music.
Or Ableton Light if you're not an iThing person. Sorry.
Yes, Dan. Well, yep. Yep. So there's always there's always going to be a need for the person who knows how to create that body of work that you're looking for, and having tools to be able to democratize that is a good thing.
I agree with you. I take a stance. So like a lot of devs sometimes look at me like I'm an enemy, but I'm not, because I do talk about Microsoft's products that are no code, right? Even from report writing to Power Apps, and there's a place for that. But if you were to hear the whole story we talk about, it's one thing to not burden your software team with making an application for your desktop that converts Celsius to Fahrenheit. Oversimplification, the internet does that for you, but just by say whatever that means to you and your business, and they can push a few buttons and connect because they have access to the data, and you don't have to go through a pro dev. That's great, but there's a point where maybe there's features that evolve in that you need to look over the aisle and say, help me, because this has gone beyond just a little widget that I'm using to help me figure something out. And that lessens the burden on, the pro devs, but it also makes it enabling, and it makes people understand what it takes to go in for an app. And I have found most low code, no code citizen developed things that have moved into pro dev things more efficient, quicker, because they have a better understanding other than I just want this and I don't understand software engineering. Not that you building a low code, no code app gives you even a modicum of knowledge in software engineering. But what it does do is give you an understanding of what goes into building something that gives you output. Is that a good approach, or is there something I should change to that? I mean, because I've been talking like that for a while now, and people start off with crooked eyes, and then they say, "Oh yeah, I get it." Especially when the low code, no code stuff can be put into GitHub now, because then you can just turn that over to your devs and say, "Hey, yo, please help me out." Maybe not the yo part, but
yeah, that low code, no code lets you iterate quickly, lets you understand the problem space that you're trying to work in. Um, you know, and that, like you said, you can grow that and as far as you can until you get to the point where you need that pro dev, right? There's always going to be a cutoff where, like, yeah, you can't do this anymore. You want the custom features you're looking for. It's time to open up the code and take it from there.
get it to somebody with the knowledge that can actually achieve it, as opposed to, yeah, okay, definitely
And
cool.
So I actually see it a little differently. I agree with you that I think there's always going to be need in the space, but what I think we'll see is the organizations that have the means are going to be able to very, very acutely train models to be able to not remove, but definitely reduce headcount and automate a lot of the processes that are being done day to day in a lot of spaces. The rate of adoption on technology, it's almost a war of the haves versus have-nots. But I think that certain $3 trillion companies, right, that are very, very focused on how do we make sure we squeeze every drop out of the lemon, are going to be willing and are already making those investments to maximize profits, to increase revenue, and reduce headcount. Whereas a small bank, a small credit union, a small consulting company or things like that aren't going to have the means to train their own models to that scale, I guess. They're the ones that'll kind of keep the dream alive, if you know what I mean. Curious of your thoughts on that.
I guess I could see that. You could almost flip it too. I mean, the smaller players may be the ones using those low code models that you're talking, and the models you're talking about, because they honestly can't afford the custom pro developers that are required to make the custom applications. So I think you're right. I just think that it may actually be a little bit reversing and on where the headcount cutting goes.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective for sure. Yeah, no, that's good.
I'm gonna throw another one out to the group here about, say, getting buy-in. So, true story. Recently, I just got slammed with a $6,000 bill from Microsoft for a Copilot, a security Copilot that is largely underused, used actually to demo what security Copilots can do. So there is a cost to this, right? It's a real cost. Like, I'm feeling that cost right now personally, which spurred this add-on question, right? what do you do to convince say a business that has a development shop in it, or even a development organization, software engineering firm? How do you convince them of the cost to deploy these tools, to make them useful? I mean, it's a lot of soft costs, and if we know in our industry, it's hard to justify soft costs. Savings of time is hard to justify, as opposed
to quantify.
Yeah, it's like, as opposed to offsetting other costs. It's like, I'm not buying these. I'm not going to buy Visual Studio because I got this now. You need both, right? So how do you justify that, or what's your case to the business?
I would say probably your best case is to point out what the cost would be if they don't. You know, if you don't, if you're not willing to make these changes, what's the cost of losing? Because you're not going to be able to be competitive in your space, and you're going to lose ground. So,
same could be said for employees, right? I mean, you know, the old saying that you know, there's a cost to training your people and keeping them move forward, but if you don't want to lose good people, that's going to be your cost if you don't keep them entertained, you know, not entertained, but learning and challenged and growing in their own person, you know. So very, very similar. You know, you think of the human capital versus the tooling nature of it.
Very cool. So a couple more questions. I know we're pretty close to time here, so I'm just going to rapid fire them. So what kind of changes to those engineers do you see happening? Those software engineers, those developers, what skill sets are they not fitted with that they should be fitted with to live in a world of AI in your space?
Well, as the speed of change increases, then you know, any developer today is going to need an even greater emphasis on learning new skills, new technology, and understanding how to apply them as this loop gets tighter and tighter of change and progress. And that's one thing. That's probably the biggest thing is continuous learning.
Yeah, I took a course and exam to be a prompt engineer. So I can put that on my LinkedIn. I am a prompt engineer. There is talking to specifically Copilot and ChatGPT. It is different. You have to, like, even with something as focused as development, you have to give it context in which you're asking that question. If not, your results may vary. And I'm wondering if we're going to start seeing in all the colleges some sort of a class, you know, like they got basket making, but they're going to have like prompt engineering 101 or something like that. Do you think that's something that's going to be taught, or is that just something that we just need to acquire as a tech group?
Well, I mean, it's yeah, I mean, both, right? Because I don't think you're going to have a prompt engineering 101. It's certainly going to be a component of a class. You know, maybe there's a generative AI or a large language model curriculum that's put out there as an entire class, and the prompt engineering and the RAG architecture and those types of things are part of that. I'd find it pretty hard to put a full semester to just prompt engineering, though. I don't know.
You never know.
Yeah.
Like I said, they got basket weaving. So again, we kind of talked through, like, we picked up on this, but pointedly, what is your biggest concern? Your biggest issue when you put the head down at night with AI in this software engineering space? Is, if there isn't one. If there isn't, that's cool too. But like, are there any concerns? I know Chris was spitting some doom and gloom about head count cuts and stuff like that, but does any of that cross your mind? Or are you just like, hey, this is a tool, I'm going to use it with my team, or being successful with it, go forward?
Well, there is a bit of an unknown where we're headed, so that is concerning, right? Everyone can get a little anxious about that. But some of the other things that I wonder how will play out in the long run. I mean, we have these junior developers coming up in this time where they can ask AI, you know, Copilot and ChatGPT all these questions and get these instant answers. And that wasn't the case when I grew up, through the tech stacks. And is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? I don't know. I mean, will they, there's a certain, there's certain stripes you earn working through a problem. And if you don't have to put in as much work as these tools get better, I don't know. What are the results going to be of that? I'm not sure.
That's a brilliant answer. Because I tell my tech teams, like, I don't give them an answer unless like the house is burning. Like, yeah, there's the fire extinguisher. But like when they're searching for something, I give them the direction to find the answer, because finding the answer to me sticks better than just being given an answer. Because if you're just given an answer, you're just going to keep going back to that source and getting that same answer over and over again. You might keep it by repetition, but did you learn anything? That's brilliant. Thank you for that one.
Yeah. Well, when you go back to that experience and you're looking at, 80% of the code is right. If you don't have the background to be able to look at it and say, well, no, this is a problem, that's a problem, things like that. That's where the problems come in. It's redundant. But the metaphor I like to use is you're not going to get off your couch and go run a marathon tomorrow unless you're already trained for it. You can't just instantly go do that. You have to train for it. You have to log the miles. And honestly, that's the best part, right? Because you're working towards something, you're growing, right? So, I think it's going to be problematic. And when I put my my academic hat on, it's a continual challenge. And as a professor, I need to change the way that I'm putting out material and requirements for success within the class to accommodate the chat GPTs of the world.
That's brilliant too. Jeez, we got all kinds of brilliance. I think we're close to the end. I know we're pretty much at time. Any final thoughts, Chris, that you want to, or any final questions?
No, I like that we were able to kind of branch things out a little bit, and talk to a real live principal software engineer that has as much experience as Matt does. I think experience, tells a lot. And you're seeing, I think, both the good and bad aspects of what AI is doing for industry and where we're going with it. So, Matt, awesome to have your time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Any final thoughts, Matt?
It was a pleasure talking with you guys. It was fun going over all this material. Thanks for having me. Really,
absolutely. Final question: would you come back?
Absolutely.
Awesome. We told you we'd make it painless on you, but yeah, that's perfect. Well, thank you again for coming. Chris, thanks for the introduction. Really great conversation. Gave me a lot to think about. So let's wrap this up. Some CYA, we got to say this, I got to edit out the CYA bit, but the show's for informational and entertainment purposes. Consult a professional before attempting to deploy any business or technical topics we discussed on this show. So I'm going to round this off with some final thoughts. I got more food for thought talking with Matt and Chris today than I thought I would get. I thought we would roll through the questions and understand it, but the answers were thought-provoking, specifically around what it looks like downrange from here. What does it mean, and how can we make things better? We can always make things better as a technology team, and with that, we want to make this show better. We want to keep bringing guests like this here to give thought-provoking. Please put in the comments anything that you may have thought of or picked up on. I know we have a hard time struggling. People listen on the go. They're on the treadmill and they can't text on the treadmill, and whoop, off they go. So we want to make sure you're safe when you're replying, but let's get some comments going in this section and keep this banter going. We appreciate you as listeners. We appreciate you as followers and viewers, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you all.